We all know that when we have poison in our body, the poison can make us sick. Okay, of course, and we can end up in a serious health issue, even die from poison. So poison is something very serious that we all aware of. In Buddha's teaching, the Buddha taught about the three poisons. But these poison the Buddha refers to are the poison for our minds. So what are those poisons that the Buddha talked about? Okay, so that's what we are going to talk about today. Namaste, welcome to Buddha's teaching. The three poisons. The three poisons that the Buddha taught in the early days are greed or desire, anger or hatred, and ignorance. Okay, these are the three poisons that lead us into suffering. So physically, we know that poison make us sick, make our body sick. But mentally, we are not aware of these three poisons. For most of us, we just think that the unwholesome activity that happens in our mind are just normal. But in Buddha's teaching, the Buddha points to these three poisons as the poison of our mind which cause the suffering in our daily life, in everyone's life. Okay, so this greed, anger, and ignorance are the three poisons that cause suffering in everyone's life. So as we have covered, and I have covered since the beginning of the series, from the introduction all the way up to now, episode or lesson number 8 here, we have talked about suffering. We have gone over about what dukkha or sufferings is, and the different kinds of suffering that we have. And all of those suffering, they have the roots that we have gone over, right? And as we go lower and lower and comes to desire, as we in the last episode, lesson 7, we said desire is the root of all suffering, right? So because our desire create all kinds of emotion, and our desire create attachment, our desire create longing and craving, and which leads to all kinds of emotion that our mind reacts to whether the our desire is met or not. We want something, and when unexpected desire, when expected desire not met, then we have issue. So desire can lead to many problems, and of course, as we have learned so far, when desire is not met, it can generate anger, right? So anger is the offspring of desire also. So that's why in the three poison, greed or desire is one, and anger is the other. So now we have covered two of them so far, okay, in the series, okay, desire and anger. And of course, these two, they feed each other, and desire can generate anger, and anger can generate unwholesome mind, unwholesome karma, right? Because as like in the Dhammapada, which means that in the Buddha's uttering, the Buddha said the mind precedes all things, right? So before we speak, every single one of us, before we speak, before we do something, it comes from our mind, right? Our mind think about it, and we long for something, we want something, or we react to things that our five senses encounter. Okay, so our mind react. What it means is that when the mind likes or dislikes something, it has some kind of there's some kind of desire that arises within us, and that create attachment, create linking, clinging, and create attaching and grabbing on to trying to get it or try to push back, right? So that create all kinds of emotion, and it creates activities. Okay, it makes us speak, it makes us yell, it makes us smile, it makes us cry, and all that, right? So but everything starts with our mind. Okay, so the mind precedes all things. Without the mind, there's no speech, there's no action. We don't do things if the mind is not there. Like for example, when we are asleep, okay, then the mind go to sleep. We do not speak and we do not do anything because the mind is asleep. We only do things, we only say things when the mind is awake. So the mind precedes all things. Okay, so that's what the Buddha said. Our mind precedes all things. So when the mind is wholesome, whatever comes out is wholesome. Okay, when you have a wholesome mind, for example, you have empathy, you have loving and kindness, you have generosity, right? Um, you have compassion toward other being and all that. When you have that within your mind, what comes out is a nice tone of voice, a nice movement of your body, the expression of the body and in your on your face, in your physical body, and the way you speak is according to that wholesome mind that we have, right? And vice versa, or it's the same thing. If the mind is not wholesome, the mind is angry, agitated, frustrated, upset, mad, sad or whatnot. When the mind is in that state, of course, it generates the speech or the action of the body accordingly. Okay, so whether wholesome or unwholesome, or there are things that sometimes there's neither wholesome or unwholesome. Let's say you just move a cup of water from this side of the table, from one side of the table to the other, so that is neither wholesome or unwholesome, but it still comes from the mind. The mind has some kind of desire of moving a certain object from one place to the other. So everything starts with our mind, right? So that's what the Buddha said. Um, that's what the Buddha taught. The Buddha taught the concentration of Buddha's teaching is about our mind. Okay, although he also touched on the physical side of it, but the main concentration, the bulk of the teaching is in the mind. Okay, because the Buddha, we can say that the Buddha is the mind doctor, right? He's not the physical doctor, he's the mind doctor. So now the last thing of the three poisons that we have not touched upon is ignorance. All right, what is ignorance? Ignorance is actually at the very base of suffering, I have seen, I have shown you in the graph before. Ignorance is at the bottom, underneath desire. Okay, desire, like you said, you seen desire create the attachment, the emotion, the suffering that go up. But at the bottom, below desire, is the is ignorance. Okay, because of ignorance, there's greed. Okay, because when there's greed can lead to unwholesome activity, stealing and all that, or cheating and things like that. Or greed can lead to anger and cause some fight and argument, and so on and so forth. But at the bottom of those two is ignorance. So ignorance is at the very base of our suffering. Okay, so what is ignorance? Ignorance here has nothing to do with degree of knowledge that we obtain from colleges or university. Okay, it has nothing to do with that. Okay, you can have a PhD degree, you can have a double whatever degree, master in this, master in that, you can still be ignorant. Okay, so this ignorance here has nothing to do with the academia that we have learned from school. This ignorance here is referred to what we call the self-I. Okay, I, right? In the human world, in our world, conventional world, I, as you also identify yourself as I, I am this, I am that, right? My name is this, that. The I is at the center of everything that we all come to know, right? In other words, it's the I is like the center of the universe. Everything evolve around the I. Okay, so this I here, this is the ultimate root cause of our suffering because of the misunderstanding of this self I. Okay, so because when there is I, there is you. Okay, and when there's you, there's separation. Okay, so this is the important this is the important thing that the Buddha had discovered. Okay, when the Buddha, of course, before enlightenment, the Buddha was also a human. Okay, so when he was a human, he also referred to himself as I, right? So I have issue this, why I am this, why I am that, and all that, right? So that's what he went into seclusion, into the forest, trying to find out what's going on. Okay, and when he discovered the truth, okay, when he discovered the ultimate reality of this I, this self I, okay, he broke the ignorance. Okay, there's no more ignorance about this self I that we all refer to ourselves, okay, as I. Okay, he understands the root cause of the suffering. He understands what that self I is, and that is the teachings that in Buddhism, in Buddha's teaching, the Buddha taught about what in the Pali word they call nama rupa. Okay, nama means mind, rupa means body. Okay, but in the Western society we flip it around. We say body and mind. Okay, but either way it doesn't matter. Okay, so the ultimate reality lead the Buddha to teach about the body and mind. And as I have mentioned a little earlier, the body is one part of the small part of the teaching, but the mind is the big concentration. Okay, the mind is a big concentration because the mind is the big kahuna is the leading cause of everything we do, of everything we say. Okay, so that is the third poison, ignorance, that the Buddha taught, and how to break it. And the Buddha break it apart, analyze it, what that I is, and draw out the footprint or the matrix of what the so-called I that we all refer ourselves to. So this is the deeper part of the teaching. Okay, so far from the beginning and up until last episode, we have covered what suffering is, dukkha, the first noble truth, and the root of cause, of suffering, the different level, the different layers of suffering. Okay, but now we go to the deepest level of our suffering. Okay, the self I. Okay, So now we're going deeper. Okay, we're going deeper into the Dharma, which is the Buddha's teaching. We call it the Dharma. Okay, so in this part of Buddha's teaching, we're gonna cover about law of impermanence. Okay, about the aggregate of what we call form or the body. Okay, how the Buddha break it down, even though we don't go into details because it will take months and months to go through all the details. I'm only just gonna go over the major point. Okay, and of course the aggregates of the mind, right? How, and when the Buddha breaks down the mind for us, and that's what we're gonna get into to see the nature, the impermanence, the law of impermanence, of course, the impermanence nature of the body and the impermanence nature of the mind. And from that, it leads us to further into the study. After we break it down, after the Buddha break it down, and then we get to understand it, the always changing body and our mind, then we get to understand this self-I at a deeper level, right? The I that we refer to ourselves, or who we are. We get to understand what this I here, the sense of I that we all have, what is it? Okay, because that is the last frontier that we need to understand in order for us to break away from the cycle of suffering that we have. Okay, the issue that we have is because of the self I. So once we understand what that self I is, we just go boom, okay, got it, understand. But before we get to that, we have to get a little lower, get into the study of that self I. Okay, what that I is. And of course there's a side lesson to it, because it will talk the teaching will take you into to understand a little bit more about karma, which is, and also the cause and the effect, because karma, produce effects and all that, right? Okay, so one step at a time. And now you understand at least that in Buddha's teaching, when the Buddha referred to the three poisons, that's what they are. The three poisons are the substances that cause mental problem, that cause our mind to be, um, having all kinds of issue. It's because of our mental sickness. Okay, and the mental sickness has its roots in greed, in anger, and in ignorance. Okay, and so far we have covered greed or desire that can lead to a lot of unwholesome activity of the mind. And we also study a little bit about anger, and that anger, what anger can do, right? Create all kinds of issue and fight and destruction. And then and now the last one is ignorance that we're gonna go into. Okay, in the next episode, in the next talk. All right, so that's what we're gonna do uh, next time. Please feel free to leave me a comment or a question down below, and I'll be more than happy to respond back to you. All right, namaste.